Joe Clanderman is exactly what the doctor ordered for Baylor football.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of ESPN Central Texas and from Rogue Media Network. I appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day. And we have a new defensive coordinator to talk about, Joe Clanderman from Kansas State. I was skeptical at first, but I'll tell you, this might be a dynamite hire for Baylor football. Then we will look at who's going to jump ship with him, who's coming from Kansas State. There's a couple names that have already been thrown into that mixer. And how about not one, but two All-Americans on this 5-7 Baylor team? How did that happen? They deserve it? We'll tell you about it coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. But we start where we start. Despite some cryptic Twitter following, it's not who we thought it was going to be as Baylor's defensive coordinator. The Bears do have a new defensive coordinator, and it is Joe Clanderman from Kansas State. And I got to say, I first look at the numbers, Kansas State, points per game, and I'm like, ooh, okay. But taking a look further, I think this is a good hire for Baylor. And I don't just throw that out there. This I think is actually as good a hire as Baylor could have made under the circumstances that they are under, which is that they're a losing team. They're a losing program. They've got a head coach who fancies himself a defensive coordinator who's clearly not one anymore, at least not a defensive play caller. And so you got to work under that guy who could be fired 2 weeks into next season, after you moved your wife and 4 kids down to Waco, Texas. Like, that's not a very sexy offer for a lot of coaches. And yet, I think they walked away with a pretty good one as their DC. So again, I'm looking through the numbers, and I tweeted this out when this became official. I'm looking at the numbers, and their points per game, where Kansas State ranked in the FBS over Joe Clanderman's time there. It's not exactly glittering the last couple of years. You look at that. He started first year there, they were 84th in total defense. Okay, that's the first year. And then it picks up 23rd, 29th, year he wins the Big 12 championship, 27th, and then down to 50th, and then down to 80th last year for this 6-6 Kansas State team that didn't impress anybody. So I'm like, okay, maybe this was just as good as you can get. But the thing that really sticks out for me, they turn teams over. Baylor is so awful at turning teams over, especially under Dave Aranda, and specifically after 2021, when that loaded defense of guys he did not recruit ended up leaving. Average number of turnovers forced since 2022. That's the year that Kansas State won the Big 12, and it's also the year that most of the guys who were very successful under Matt Rule and Dave Aranda were out the door. So average number of turnovers forced since 2022. Kansas State, 22 per year. Baylor, 16.75. Guys, think about that. 5 extra turnovers a year. And by the way, one of those years was a complete outlier for Kansas State. They only had 15. So, the median number is well higher than that. They turn teams over. Baylor does not. Baylor was second to last in interceptions and fumbles forced in the Big 12 this year. One of those years under Dave Aranda, I think that was actually 24, they forced 3 fumbles all season long. Like, that is not going to win you many games. Meanwhile, Kansas State's out here. Do they have the best points per game defense in the country? No, not really at all. But number 8 in the country in turnover margin this season. 4th in total turnovers forced on a bad year. Like, that's something Baylor could have used years ago. It's great to be having it now. And for those wondering, well, if he's such a good DC, why is he coming here? Like, why is he coming here under these circumstances you've laid out? It's because Joe Clanderman, for lack of a better term, is a Chris Kleiman guy. He's a 4-time national champion with Chris Kleiman at North Dakota State. And he went with Kleiman to Manhattan and has stuck around ever since. Chris Kleiman retired. He's not going somewhere else. And you talk about a guy who was very successful in Klanderman at the FCS level, then comes up and the guy he follows is no longer at the FBS level. It's not like he's got a Rolodex of contacts that he can go and call up. You know, this isn't Jeff Grimes. This isn't Ron Roberts. It's not Jake Spavital. Guys who had all kinds of experience all over the map in FBS who could just go and find a job. This wasn't necessarily the case for Klanderman. Not like no one would hire him, but I think he sees an opportunity to stay in the Big 12, in the Power 4, and go to where the talent is rich at Baylor. And I think that's a good opportunity for him as well as a great opportunity for Baylor. The other thing I really like is Klanderman develops guys, develops them. And he specifically works with defensive backs. That's where his kind of background is. And so in his time at Kansas State, when we are just focusing on the defensive backs, in his 5 years as the DC at Kansas State, he had, well, actually 4 years because I'm not counting the first one because he didn't really develop that player. But in 4 years as the DC at Kansas State, the last 4 years he was there, he had 5 defensive backs drafted in the NFL. 5. You know how many defensive backs Dave Aranda's defenses had drafted in the NFL in the last 4 years? I'll give you a hint. It's a number lower than 1. Because, in fact, of actual Dave Aranda guys whom he found and developed at Baylor, 1 player has been drafted in the NFL. 1. No first-round picks. Shocking. Klanderman's had 5 defensive backs. He's had a couple other defensive players, including a first-round pick, drafted in the NFL. That has been the major problem for Dave Aranda at Baylor. Like, beyond the slow starts or winning at home or winning on the road or falling behind, beyond all of that, the major problem is they can't freaking develop talent. They can't get these guys to where they're good enough to play at the next level. And I know we only care about what Baylor's doing, but here's a news flash. If you have guys that are good enough to play in the NFL, you've probably got a pretty good college team. And Dave Aranda and his staff have not been able to do that flat out, full stop. Proof is in the pudding. Joe Clanderman, he can do that. And he's been known as an innovative defensive coordinator, multiple fronts, likes to blitz from the defensive back position, and they turn teams over. Really, what more could you ask for? In the situation that Baylor is in, this is about as good a hire as you could have made. All the stuff you're hearing from the full Baylor people about Doug McNamee, all that smoke they're blowing, that's actually true about Joe Clanderman. At least based off his resume, man. He's been successful everywhere he's been. He develops guys, he puts them in the NFL, and they create a lot of turnovers. Like at Baylor, that's got to be like a good starting point because nobody's expecting him to come in here and have a top 40 defense with the Baylor Bears next year. Nobody. But if you're getting 5 or 6 more turnovers a year, if you're a top 10 in the country at turning teams over, that is a heck of a start. That could be just the break that Baylor needs. That could be just the one facet they can improve on that can help them win games. There's a couple of losses this year that could have been turned around by 1 turnover. You know, I could think of a couple. Arizona State game being 1. Auburn being 1. You know, like there's all kinds of, go up and down the list. Houston, that could have been bowl eligibility right there if you just had 1 more damn turnover. And Baylor's been awful at that for years now. Joe Clanderman fixes that. And I'm excited. I am actually genuinely excited about this hire. It's not just me blowing smoke or having copium. This is me being genuine. This is a good hire for Baylor. Probably better than even Maurice Linguist, the former Baylor player who's now coaching defensive backs at Alabama that just suddenly followed everybody on Twitter and then didn't get the job. By the way, I think Linguist is a good coach. I was doing a ton of research on him. I thought that could have been a good hire as well, but I really like this Joe Clanderman one. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, or tweet at us at Locked On Baylor if you're listening wherever you get your podcast. When we come back, we're going to give you the biggest question facing Joe Clanderman as he takes on this job. And then we're going to look at who might come with him and who's exiting for the Baylor Bears. All that and more coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Rougiette. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. You got stress from work, from money, from your life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rougiette Ready is designed to help you take back control. It is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body, so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment really matters. 3 clinically proven ingredients and 1 mint just dissolves under your tongue and it absorbs fast. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to Rougiette.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiette Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You guys know NFL Sundays, they move fast, like Rougiette Ready fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching that game, you're reacting to it in real time. You're placing your bets as the action unfolds. Every single momentum swing and highlight moment, you are there. Live spreads and money lines, they adjust instantly. The player props update as the guy heats up, and you can be on it. You can bet the next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap and every drive. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Bring it back here on Locked On Baylor, reacting to Baylor's new DC hire. Joe Clanderman coming in as the defensive coordinator from that same post that he had at Kansas State under longtime pal Chris Klieman. Before we get into some of the players that might be moving, I got to look at the biggest question that's facing Joe Clanderman here, and probably not him necessarily, but the Baylor football program. Okay, Joe Clanderman is coming in as your defensive coordinator, Dave Aranda. Does that mean you're going to give him more responsibilities than Matt Powledge's last 2 years here? Because you remember, I mean, it actually could have been easy to forget that Matt Powledge was the defensive coordinator the last 2 seasons. But he doesn't get much of the blame because he wasn't the play caller. You've heard of like the Rhinos. This is a Kino defensive coordinator in name only. Dave Aranda was calling the shots there. He was devising the game plan. He was calling the plays. That's got to stop. Like, you bring in a guy who's just about as good a hire as you could have made right now, who's been calling the plays, who's well respected around college football. He's the play caller. Like, this Dave Aranda calling the plays and being the head coach crap needs to stop. That is clearly not working. You were genuinely one of the worst defenses in all of FBS this year, let alone the Power 4. It was embarrassing to watch week after week. There's an adult in the room now in Joe Clanderman. And I got to imagine that he comes in with the guarantee that he is calling the plays. You know, like we talked about it at the end of the 23 season. Dave Aranda clearly pulled out all the stops and really did so again after 24. Where, you know, he brought in Paul Gonzalez last year, longtime, Gary Patterson assistant, was great at TCU with the defensive backs. He brings him in. Dave Aranda makes himself the defensive coordinator. You got your quasi head coach, offensive coordinator in the building the last 2 seasons as well, and Jake Spavital. Like, we are at no excuse time. Unless, of course, his boss gets fired and then no one's holding his feet to the fire. And then, yeah, I guess we are in some excuse time, because here he gets another shot to bring in another coordinator. And we just can't be messing around. Joe Clanderman's got to be calling the plays. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not, actually. He has got to be the guy. We are done with this Dave Aranda calling the plays kind of stuff. It's over. So now who comes in with Joe Clanderman? Because there have been some names that have been thrown into the mixer already. How about this? It's cryptic tweet season. Logan Bartley, freshman safety for the Kansas State Wildcats, one that the Kansas State people were really high on. In fact, Christian Rao, Locked On Wildcats host, who knows this team inside and out, said he would have had Bartley on his don't touch list, please don't leave list. Didn't play a lot this year, but a freshman highly thought of. And then he's tweeting out this picture with him and Joe Clanderman about to do the Tiger Woods big dog. This kid needs a dap him up. You think he could be going with his defensive coordinator? Sure sounds that way, at least on this cryptic tweet. The other name that's being thrown around that I've heard from a couple of people of like, ooh, watch out here, including Christian Rao has told me, watch out on this one. This is the big one. Zashon Rich, the sophomore cornerback. This dude was legit an all Big 12 player this year. An interception, 10 passes deflected, became cornerback number 1 when a lot of the Kansas State people didn't think that was going to happen. But now what they say now is Joe Clanderman put a ton of work and a ton of confidence into this kid. And they've had a run of defensive backs and specifically corners at Kansas State, as evidenced by the fact that they've had 5 defensive backs drafted in the last 4 years. Zashon Rich is the next in that line. I'm telling you, bro, if you can get Zashon Rich in here with Joe Clanderman, then yeah, it is the best possible hire you could have made. And Baylor's defensive backs, by the way, were solid this past year. I think that was a huge area of concern, and they exceeded my expectations for sure. And that was without Caden Jenkins for all intents and purposes, and without Calvin Simpson-Hunt with all intents and purposes. Like they were not a part of the equation. And that was still a good unit. You add Zashon Rich to that unit, that's massive. That's massive. And by the way, they'll be looking for a number 1 corner because DJ Coleman out the door. Statistically, was probably your best corner this year. And Joe Clanderman fame, he had a couple of turnovers, had 2 picks, led the team with 2 picks. He was an impressive player once again this year. He's the first one out in the portal for Baylor. So you're already looking for a CB1. Zashon Rich. I mean, that's the dude. That is the dude right there. And he's just getting started. Another question that I have out of this is, kind of talked about him a few minutes ago. Paul Gonzalez. What becomes of Paul Gonzalez? This looked like a coup of a hire last year when you brought him in. In fact, I remember saying on the show, I was saying, do you bring in Paul Gonzalez just to be your defensive backs coach? Or should he be calling the plays with his experience? Of course, that didn't happen, and look what happened. Haven't heard anything about him. He's not one of the 3 other coaches that are already out the door for Baylor, with Matt Powledge and Noke Brechterfield and Mason Miller. So what becomes of Paul Gonzalez? You brought in a DC whose specialty is defensive backs. And it's not like things are going swimmingly at Baylor. Is Gonzalez looking for a way out of here? Haven't heard anything specific on that. Just saying, like, it doesn't. I don't know if this job is what's best for Paul Gonzalez at this point when you bring in a defensive backs guy. But Klanderman's got to be calling the plays, and I would give him as full a reign as you possibly can on, hey, if you got some guys to bring in, if you got some players to bring in, let's bring them in. I trust this guy 100% when it comes to identifying talent and developing them. I was looking for a word there, and it was not grooming them, although that would make sense technically, but developing them. With his track record, I trust him 1,000%. I've gone from 100% to 1,000% on trusting Joe Clanderman over Dave Aranda to identify talent and bring some players in. So all that to say, 2 segments worth of saying it. I like this hire. I like who could be coming with him. I just ask that it's his show. And if it doesn't work, by the way, it doesn't work. No, there's not going to be high expectations for this team going into 2026. Okay? So if it doesn't work, it's almost like, who cares? If this thing doesn't work, Dave Aranda is going to be fired anyway. Probably will, almost no matter what. I just don't, but that's a different story for a different day. He's got to be calling the plays. Got to be calling the plays. Klanderman does. Let's talk about some Baylor players that are getting their flowers right now. How about 2 All-Americans? We'll tell you who they are next on Locked On Baylor. But first, it's that time of year. You guys are looking for gifts. If you know anything about me, I am not a good gift giver at all, other than giving you the #1 daily Baylor football podcast. I'm really not good at giving gifts. And so gift hunting season is in full effect right now. You want something meaningful, you want something personal and guaranteed to get a reaction. Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories. Because Aura is not your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos, this is great for them. And the packaging comes gift ready. No price tag, no wrapping needed. Just a huge win. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames. Named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code college. This deal is exclusive to our listeners, and the frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Shop now and support the show by mentioning, Baylor, Locked On Baylor at checkout. Terms and conditions do apply. Amazingly, at 5-7, Baylor's got a couple All-Americans. Consensus All-Americans, not yet. That hasn't come out. But The Athletic has put out their All-American team, and not 1, but 2 Baylor Bears appeared on the list. Palmer Williams, of course, big Palmer Williams fan, and tight end Michael Trigg. It's the first time since 2021 that Baylor's had an Athletic All-American. They had 2 guys, Jalen Petrie and Connor Galvin, and it could be the first time since 2021 that they had a consensus All-American as well. It's, again, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Like, it's no NFL players, no All-American players. It's crazy that Baylor football doesn't win a lot. It's crazy. Anyway, but Michael Trigg, what a season. What a season, and finishes 2 years at Baylor with 80 catches for 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. I mean, just an absolute stud this year. He was just setting records. He's one of the 3 finalists for the Mackey Award, so he's right up there for that. And Mel Kiper loves him. Looking at Mel Kiper, I keep up with this to see if Baylor's finally going to have some guys drafted. Mel Kiper, on his position rankings, does have Michael Trigg 3rd at his position, which, of course, according to Mel Kiper, is fullback / H-back. 3rd best one, Michael Trigg, Baylor. I noticed that the 2 guys ahead of him, Justin Jolly and Eli Stowers, are also both tight ends. So I don't know if this was a huge mix-up on the ESPN website, but he did have a list of another top 10 tight ends that are tight ends. So I don't really know where that's coming from. Stowers and Trigg and Jolly all had humongous years. So I'm leaning towards that's probably his actual top 10 of tight ends, but who knows? Michael Trigg certainly deserves to be on any kind of top 10 tight end list. And how about Palmer Williams, man? He was almost forgotten about this year because the Baylor offense just didn't punt very much. But he was the Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Year. Big 12 leading 46.92 yards per punt. That's the second best in school history, behind his average of 49 yards per punt last season. And this is a school with a 2-time All-American punter and Daniel Sepulveda. Palmer Williams, just awesome player. And by the way, his family is a big fans of Locked On Baylor. They're not the families that I usually reference when I'm hearing things about them, so don't go after them for that. They're not, but they've come up and they've said they listen to the program. So big fan of the Williams family and Palmer Williams in general, because he's been a damn good player for the Baylor Bears. And he might be your consensus All-American. He really might be. But it's a little surprising, I guess, to see too, for a team that just underachieved, but I'm not going to argue with them. Palmer Williams was great. And Michael Trigg, I think, is one of the top 3 or 5 best tight ends in America. Did anybody get snubbed? Were you expecting 2 people? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're on the path towards 5,000 subscribers, and we're getting really, really close. So I really appreciate you guys who are making it your first listen today and every day. Get involved in that comment section as well for your thoughts on the new defensive coordinator. Let me know in the comment section below. Be easy. Have a great weekend this weekend, and we will see you on Monday on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.